This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Bruchim Abam, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the Kol Agra de Pirka here in Kew Garden Hills, New York. We want to give a special Yashar Koach to Rabbi Glatstein, who's the founder of the network of Agra de Pirka Koilim, which throughout the United States now. But obviously this is the main one, right? But this is where you need to be. And we give Rabbi Ezra a tremendous Yashar Koach, and Rabbi Hashem should give him Koach to expand Agra de Pirka all across the United States, all across the world, and should be Zachar lahagdol Torah lahadira. Okay, Bruchim Abam, welcome everyone. This is the third hour of learning. You know, we're in the third hour. Third hour is a very tough hour. You know, the Mishnah says in the sixth parak of Perkei Avos, there are 48 Kinyanei Torah, Mem Ches. So Ben Yoyada gives a remez that we know the Torah is Nimshal al Shnei Devarim. The Torah is alluded to two things, to Mayim and to Lechem. So you have in the Beis Hamikdash, you have the Lechem Aponim, where there was a nest with the Lechem Aponim that remained fresh, remained hot, from beginning until end, from Friday to Friday. So the Ben Yoyada wants to know what's the inyan that the lechem remained hot from beginning until the end. So he says like this, you know, the first shiur that you go to, everyone's excited, everyone's focused, the caffeine is still working, you know, you're still refreshed. By the third shiur already, things are not as hot, it's not as fresh, you're not as fresh as when you got up in the morning. So the lechem has to be cham. Cham is 48. You have to use all 48 kinyanei Torah, not just by the first shiur, especially the third shiur. So this is the big barometer. So we're going to try to keep everybody at full attention. Of course, we're within 36 hours of the Yom Tov of Shavuos, Habalinu L'Toiva. And we're going to discuss one of the most well-known Gemaras, Nagea to Shavuos. The Gemara tells us in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Peiches, Darash Rabbi Simoy. Rabbi Simoy darshaned, B'shah shehikdimu Yisrael nasa l'nishma, when Klal Yisrael preceded the word nasa before nishma, bo shishim riboy shamalachei asharis. 60 myriads of heavenly angels came, l'chol echad ve'echad miYisrael. For every single yid, kashu lo shnei kesarim, and they gave us two crowns. Echad keneged nasa, the echad keneged nishma. One crown for nasa, and one crown for nishma. But pay careful attention. The Gemara says that how many malachei asharis came? 600,000, 60 myriads of malachei asharis. One malach gave us a crown for nasa, one for nishma. In other words, each malach gave us two crowns. Not 101.2 million. We had one malach, each malach gave each yid one crown. One keneged nasa, and one keneged nishma. Says the Gemara, v'kivan shechatu, Yisrael, when Klal Yisrael sinned by the Egel, yardu mea ve'esrim riboy malachei chavala. 1.2 million destructive angels came, upirkum, and they removed the crowns. Shenemar, vayisnatzlu b'nei Yisrael es edyam mehar chayrev. And Klal Yisrael were vayisnatzu, they were stripped of their crowns from Har Sinai. So in other words, we stood at Har Sinai, we said Nasa v'nishma, 600,000 malachim, each malach came and put two crowns on our heads, and then when we sinned, double the malachim came along and removed the crowns. So the question is, and this is the question of the Toras Chaim, we'll talk about some of the biographical information on Toras Chaim soon. Toras Chaim is one of the Kadmoinim, and Toras Chaim is Masechta Avodah Zarah, and Daf Beis Amud Beis. Toras Chaim asks, you know, why was it that to put the crowns on, you only needed 600,000 malachei asharis? And when it comes to removing the crowns, then you need 1.2 million malachei asharis. Typically, it's much easier to destroy something and to break something than it is to build something. You know, how many... What? If you don't... You know, how many people did it require to build the World Trade Center? Probably took thousands of people. How many people did it take to knock it down? All you need is a few mishugayim to knock it down. You know, the kids could make Lego in the basement for 10 hours, and then all you need is the baby comes along, he destroys it in 3 seconds. So why, ask the Toras Chaim, does it, when it came to putting the crowns on the heads of the malachei asharis, 600,000 malachei asharis, and then when it came to the removal of the crowns, we needed double the number of malachei asharis to remove the crowns. What in the world are these crowns? What are the crowns of Har Sinai? The Gemara says the crowns came from Nasa v'Nishma. So what were they? What did they look like? What does it mean? What did it do for us? Did we ever get it back? Where are they now? Where did they come from? Where did they go? What is the meaning of these crowns that Klal Yisrael achieved when they said, A7 Ishmael? If I were to ask you, on what day did the Rebbeinu Shalom give the Torah to Klal Yisrael? Which day of Sfira? Which day of Sfira? 50th day, right? Wrong. The Torah says, by the way, Svatim lachem imachras haShabbos, miyayim aviyach masar ma'atrufa, Shava Shabbos oitzmim etziena, and imachras haShabbos Hashvius tisperu chamishim yom. You should count 50 days. So the first question is, why don't we do what the Torah says? The Torah says tisperu chamishim yom, and nobody counts 50 days. We only count 49 days. Tonight is going to be the 49th, but we don't count the 50th. Why not? So there are basically 4 mahalchim in the Rishonim. Tosfos in Masechta Menachos says on Daf Samach Yamud Beis, Tosfos says you have to know how to read the pasuk. Ad mimachras haShabbos haShvius tisperu. Until the day after the 7th Shabbos, you should count. What day is that? Chamishim Yom. That is the 50th day. In other words, Ad mimachras haShabbos haShvius shehu chamishim yom tisperu. It doesn't mean tisperu chamishim yom. The chamishim yom is going on Ad mimachras haShabbos haShvius. Or Tosfos says the way you read the pasuk is Ad mimachras haShabbos haShvius tisperu. Comma, pause, stop. Chamishim yom v'hikrabtem mincha chadash al Hashem. In other words, the words chamishim yom are going on the next pasuk. V'hikrabtem mincha chadasha l'Hashem. By the way, the Rishonim point out that the remes to have chalav on Shavuos are the words Chadasha Lashem B'Shavuos Seichem is Rashi Tevos Chalav. Okay. The Rosh in Masechta Pesachim says something very interesting, that whenever the Torah gives a number, it's off by 1. The Torah very often rounds off a number. For example, the Rosh says, the Torah says Arba'im Yakenu, and you only give 39 malchus. Or for example, the Rosh says, it says that Yaakov Avinu came down to Mitzrayim b'shivim nafesh, and Rashi's bothered, it's only 69. The Rosh says exactly, the Torah very often rounds off to the closest number. There's a Rabbi Yaakov Emden, Masechta Zvachim. Rabbi Yaakov Emden says, the Torah says we were in the Midbar 40 years. It's not true. We weren't in the Midbar 40 years. We were in the Midbar 38 and change. So the Torah rounds it off. So too by Sfira, says the Rosh, the Torah doesn't mean 50 days. It means 49 days. 50 is just a rounded off number. It happens to be, just a side point, the Roikeach gives a very interesting answer to this question. Again, why don't we count 50 days? And the Roikeach says, of course we count 50 days. The Torah says, Tisbru Chamishim Yom, we count 50 days. Kiddush Leil Shavuos is the Sfira of Yom Chamishim. You don't have to say, today is this number. Everybody knows Shavuos is the 50th day. So when you proclaim Al HaKois that tonight is Shavuos, that is the Sfira of Yom Chamishim. So I saw it brought down, according to the Roikeach, when you make Kiddush, Shavuos night, you should be mechavein to mekayim the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer. But again, I don't know that we pass like the Roikeach, but that is the Shita of the Roikeach. That's when the Torah should have been given, on the 50th day. But the Gemara tells us that one of the 3 things that Moshe Rabbeinu took upon himself to do differently than the Rebbeinu Shalom said is Moshe Rabbeinu hoisef yom echad midaitai. That the Rebbeinu Shalom told Moshe Rabbeinu, v'kidashtem hayom u'machar. So let's get the cheshbon. The Rebbeinu Shalom comes to Moshe Rabbeinu on a Wednesday. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says to Moshe, v'kidashtem hayom u'machar. Why? Ki b'yom hashlishi yered Hashem. On the 3rd day, the Rebbeinu Shalom will come down. Okay? So again, v'kidashtem hayom u'machar, v'chibsusam loisam, v'hayu nechayim l'yom hashlishi, ki b'yom hashlishi, yered Hashem l'nei kol ha'am. So Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, Moshe, today's Wednesday, sanctify yourself today, Wednesday, and tomorrow, Thursday, because on the 3rd day, Friday, I'm going to give the Torah. And comes Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu made a drasha. What's the drasha? The drasha is, the Gemara in Shabbos says on that Pezai, number 3 on your sheet, says Moshe Rabbeinu, Ma hayoim Ma machar laila imay, just like tomorrow is with the night, it's a 24-hour period. Af hayom laila imay, hayom is also a 24-hour period. Therefore, today, Wednesday, doesn't count. So hayom umachar is Thursday, Friday, and the Torah, therefore, will be given on Shabbos. So it's, ayom v'noira. The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted to give the Torah on a Friday, and Moshe Rabbeinu said, no thanks, I'll let you know when to give the Torah. We're going to push off Torah to which day of the Omer? To the 51st day of the Omer. And that's the famous kasha in the Magen Avraham Siman Tav Tzadi Daled, that why do we celebrate Shavuos on the 50th day of the Omer when Shavuos was really given, when the Torah was really given on the 51st day of the Omer? And the Magen Avraham says that's why the second day of Shavuos is so important, because the second day of Shavuos is really the day that the Torah was given. Mikan remez liyam tov sheni shal galiyos. What? All right. Mikan remez liyam tov sheni shal galiyos. That's the answer to the Magen Avraham. Good question. But, by the way, there's a beautiful remez in the Shas Shuvas Binyan Shleimai. He brings down, so there are two Torahs. There's the Luchos Rishonais, and there's the Luchos Shniyos. Luchos Rishonais were given on the 51st day of the Omer. Luchos Shniyos were given on what day of the year? Yom Kippur. So the word Anoichi is Aleph Nun, 51. That's the 51st day of the Omer. That's the Luchos Rishonais. Chaf Yud is Yom Kippur. That's the Luchos Shniyos. So both Netzinas HaTorah are alluded to in the word Anoichi, says Shas Shus Minchas Shleim. Okay, Binyan Shalom. But no, the Joshua was just before the Torah was given. There's discussion whether perhaps the day preceded the night. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says before the Torah was given, the day preceded the night. The Hafla writes that, but no, the Joshua is very simple. No, ma machar, just like hayom, in the machar and hayom machar, that machar was the night and the day. The night preceded the day. Yeah, the Gemara says, ma lemachar lailoi imoi, it was the night with it. I don't know that it means the night after. I think it means the night before. Af hayom lailoi imoi. Okay, so let's try to understand, why did Moshe Rabbeinu push off the giving of the Torah to Shabbos? What was wrong with Friday? What was wrong with Erev Shabbos? What was Moshe Rabbeinu's kavana to push off the Torah to Shabbos? Rebbeinu Shalom said that you only need 2 days of preparation. So Moshe Rabbeinu, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's kavana? So it's very interesting. We're familiar with the concept that before the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us the Torah, he offered the Torah to the Umayis Ha'olam, which is very hard to understand. Did Rebbeinu Shalom really offer the Torah? You're serious? Like the Japanese could have been the ones to get the Torah, the Italians, the Eskimos, and we just happened to luck out, and they said no. What does it mean that the Rebbeinu Shalom offered the Torah to Umayis Ha'olam? What would have been? Now, which Umayis Ha'olam did the Rebbeinu Shalom offer the Torah to? All of them? Some of them? Most of them? None of them? Did you have to belong to UN? Which Umayis Ha'olam did the Rebbeinu Shalom offer the Torah to? Rashi seems to say, and we go to V'zois HaBracha, take a look at number 6. Vayoymar, Hashem mi Sinai ba. Hashem came from Sinai. V'zarach mi Seir lamai. He shone forth to him from Seir. Hoifia mehar paran. So this pasuk seems to be saying, and only delineating 2 Umayis Ha'olam that had the opportunity to be Makabel the Torah. You have Seir. Seir, of course, is Esav. And then you have Harparan. Who lived in Harparan? Yishmael. There is no mention of any of the other Umayis Ha'olam in this pasuk. So Rashi points out, V'zarach mi Seir lamai, Shepasach levnei Seir. Hashem opened up to the Bnei Seir, Sheikablu Satira. Hoifia, the Rebbeinu Shalom revealed Mehar Paran, Shahalach Sham, Upasach levnei Yishmael, Sheikablu v'lei Ratzu. So Rashi is telling us that the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying in the Torah that Hashem made 2 offers. First to Esav, V'zarach mi Seir lamai, and then to Yishmael, Hoifia mehar paran. What happened to the rest of the Umayis Ha'olam? America never had a shot. Japan, North Korea. Why didn't North Korea have a chance? South Korea, China, Russia. Why only Esav and Yishmael? What's the inyan? Does it mean to exclude all the Umayis Ha'olam? So the Toras Chaim, look at number 10, and most of what we're going to say today comes from the Toras Chaim. Toras Chaim is one of the Kadmonim, Rabbi Avram Chaim Shiur. Rabbi Avram Chaim Shiur, he was nifter in Lemberg on the 9th day of Teves in the year 1632. His father, Rav Hirsch Elazar, was the most prominent Talmud of the Ramah, and his father was the Rebbe of the Bach. So we're going back a long time ago. So this Rabbi Avram Chaim Shiur was a Kadmoin, was a Rav in Belz, before there was anything called Belz. He was a Rav in Kremenetz, he was a Rav in Satanov, and the tradition of the Shiur family was they were descendants of the French Balei Tosfos, Rabbi Yosef Bechar Shar. Sometimes Tosfos will call it Rabbi Yosef Bechar Shar. So the Shiur family descended from them. And his brother's great-grandson is the author of the famous Sefer on Yeridea, the Tfuais Shar. Let's say Rabbi Ephraim Zalman Margolius was a descendant of the Shiur family. In any event, the Toras Chaim points out that what happened to the other Umayis Ha'olam. So you have Vizarach Miseir Lamai, Haifia Mehar Paran. What happened to the other Umayis Ha'olam? So says the Toras Chaim, they're in there too. Because they're alluded to in the end of the pasuk, Ve'asa Me'rivavais Kodesh. Ve'asa Me'rivavais Kodesh. They came from Rivavais Kodesh, meaning the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't just offer it to Esav, didn't just offer it to Ishmael, but he offered it to all the Rivavais of the Umayis Ha'olam. Fine. Frek the Toras Chaim, but why mention Esav and Ishmael separately? So he says a very important yesod. And we'll elaborate based on the Vilna Gaon in the beginning of Shir HaShirim. The Vilna Gaon in the very beginning of Shir HaShirim points out that whenever you have the number 70, there are always two heads. Meaning there's 70 plus 2. L'mashal, says the Gaon, how many names of Hashem are there? There's 72 names of Hashem, right? Rashi Masechta Sukkah points out that you have 3 psukim in Beshalach that have 72 letters, and if you take the first letter of the first pasuk, and the last letter of the second pasuk, and the first letter of the third pasuk, that's one name of Hashem. And then you have the second letter, the second to last, the second. So these 3 psukim, each pasuk that has 72 letters, could create 72 different names of Hashem. What are the 2 main names of Hashem? Ani v'hoi. Ani, that's what we daven in the Slichas. Ani v'hoi Hoshiana. There's 72 names of Hashem. The 2 main names are Ani and Hoi. By the way, Ani is name 37. V'hoi is name 1. So if you have 72 and you break it up into 2 groups, 36, 36, Ani is the first name of the second group. V'hoi is the first name of the first group. And the Gaon says whenever you have the number 70, you always have 2 heads. L'mashal again, there's 70 members of Sanhedrin, but you have the Av Bezdin and the Nasi. So you have 2 heads. Or there's 70 descendants of Yaakov, but then you have Yaakov and Yosef, the 2 heads. Throughout Kol HaTorah Kula, whenever you see the number 70, you always have 2 heads. So how many Umayis Ha'olam are there? There's 70. But who are the 2 heads? Esav and Yishmael. Yishmael is on the right side, the side of Chesed. He comes from Avraham Avinu. Esav is from the left side, the side of Din, the side of Yitzchak Avinu. They're the 2 heads of the Umayis Ha'olam. So how many Umayis Ha'olam are there? There's Shivim Umayis. But how many Roshim are there? 72. That's the Pshat, says Megala Amukos. Eila 36 Barechev. Ve'ela 36 Basusim. You have 36 nations with chariots, Esav. Basusim with horses, Yishmael. Va'anachnu b'shem Hashem lekeinu nasker. The 2 Eles. So when the Torah tells us that the Rebbeinu Shalom offered the Torah to Esav and Yishmael, it doesn't mean to the exclusion of other Umayis Ha'olam. They were the ambassadors and the representatives of all Shivim Umayis Ha'olam. Okay, so let's talk about then the Bris Bein HaBesarim. At the Bris Bein HaBesarim, Avram Avinu took the sheep and he split them. He put half on one side and half on the other, and he passed through. The splitting of the kvasim, the splitting of the sheep, they represented the Umayis Ha'olam. That represented the fact that the Umayis Ha'olam would be utterly destroyed. So Avram Avinu was walking in between the Umayis Ha'olam, and when we go between the Umayis Ha'olam and we separate the Umay Sa'olam, 36 on one side, 36 on the other side, that's what mitigates, that's what is Mesares, the Umay Sa'olam. So it's Hafla V'Fela. Think about the calendar. And this is the Megala Amukos, the number 12, quotes Rabbeinu Bechaye. If you look at our calendar, there's something called Shabbos. Shabbos is on the 7th day. Yishmael keeps their day of rest on Friday. Friday is on what side of Shabbos? Now, if you're looking at the calendar, Friday is on the left side. But if you are the calendar, Friday is on the right, because Yishmael is on the right. Yishmael is Midas HaChesed of Avraham Avinu. Yishmael is on the right side. They're Friday. Esav is on Sunday. They're on the left side of the calendar. If you're on the left side, Sunday is on the left side of Shabbos. So by keeping Shabbos, it's mevatel the koyach of Esav and Yishmael. As soon as you're able to split the Umay Sa'olam, ki hinei oyevecha Hashem, ki hinei oyevecha yoivedu, yispardu, kol paya le'oven. When you separate Esav and Yishmael, that is mesares them, that destroys them, that weakens them, and then we're able to overcome. By the way, Rabbi Isai, now we understand. The Magen Avram brings down in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph from the Arizal. It's not on your sheets. The Magen Avram brings down that how many words are in Kiddush? Says the Magen Avram, in Vayichulu you have 35 words. And in Kiddush itself you have 35 words. What's the significance that there are 35 words in Vayichulu and 35 words in Kiddush? And the Arizal is very makbid. The Arizal says, you see in the Siddur, there's certain words in parentheses. Now, I think our minhag is we do say them. Kihu yom techila. We say them. I think Sfaradim don't say it. Because Nusach Sfarad doesn't say it? Okay, many do not say it. Why? Because our Arizal says you need to be very makbid that the body of Kiddush have exactly 35 words. 35 in Vayichulu, 35 in the Bracha. It says, Ari, do not be moisif, because if you're moisif, you're not going to get the gematria of 70. What's the inyan of getting the gematria of 70? It's very pashat. What we're learning is Shabbos is mevatel the koyach of the Umay Sa'olam. 35 words of Vayichulu is mevatel Esav. 35 words of the body of Kiddush is mevatel Yishmael. You add words to Kiddush, you don't need extra enemies. We have enough enemies as it is. You don't need enemies. Keneged kihu yom tchila lemikrai kodesh. Okay, our minhag is we say it, and everyone should follow their own minhag. But the inyan of the 70 words of Kiddush is because you have Shabbos in the middle, you have Esav on the left side, you have Yishmael on the right side. And by the way, by being Moisef Kedusha Shabbos, a little bit before Friday, on Friday, a little bit after, you're going into the territory of Esav and Yishmael, you're Mesares, the Kayach of Esav and Yishmael. So you'll ask, wait a second, there's 70 words in Kiddush, but there's 72 Umay Sa'olam. So how you mevatel Esav and Yishmael themselves? Tikunei Zayar, Tikun Chav Daled, make sure you say Savri Maranan. You say, but I say V'Rabbanan. I'm just telling you what Tikkun Zayar says. Make sure you say 2 extra words. What's the inyan of the 2 extra words? Because the main body of Kiddush is Keneged Umay Sa'olam. The words Savri Maranan are mevatel the Koyach of Esav and Yishmael. Okay. Let's continue. The Megala Amukos says what? The Megala Amukos in number 12 quotes Rabbeinu Bechaye. Yeah. That Esav is on the left side, right? And Yishmael is on the right side. Now we understand, says Bnei Yissaschar, the meaning of the Gemara. The Gemara says, Shabbos, Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis, look at number 13. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Ilmole Shamru Yisrael Shabbos Rishona Lo Sholta Behen Uma V'Lashan. Had Klal Yisrael accepted and fulfilled the first Shabbos, no nation would have dominion over them. Shenemar Vayihi B'Yom HaShvi. It was on the 7th day. Yatsu Min Ha'am Lilkait. What happened? Right after Kabbalas HaTorah, Klal Yisrael went. They were Mevatel Shabbos. What happened? Vayova Yamalek. What's the connection, Rabbi Isai, between not keeping Shabbos and the prevailing of our enemies? So we understand the Kayach of Shabbos is Shabbos is in the middle of the Sunday and the Friday. Shabbos is mevatel the koyach of the Umay Sa'olam. But as soon as Klal Yisrael stumbles in Shmira Shabbos, that is when Amalek comes. Okay, let's take it a little further. The Gemara says in Masechta Baba Kama that there's a expression, there's an idiom, there's like a folklore. The Gemara says like this: Minaha milsa, look at number 14. That Baba Kama Tzadik Beis and Beis. Minaha milsa da Amri Inshi Metayel va'azal dikla bisha gabe kina desachi. The bad palm tree walks and strolls with a barren tree. It's basically a way of saying, if you want to determine the character of somebody, you don't have to know anything about him. Just see who he hangs out with. Who does he associate with? Someone who associates with bad people are bad. Someone who associates with good people are good. Meaning the bad palm tree will grow next to a barren tree. So the Gemara says this is a Yesoid Gadol, which we find in Chumash, is repeated in Navi, is thrice repeated in Ksuvim, appears in a Mishnah, and appears again in a Brisa. And the Gemara brings various psukim. For example, Vayelech Esav el Yishmael. We don't know, are these people good or bad? If Yishmael is hanging out with Esav, you know he's a bad guy. By the way, my grandfather says quite often, when he was in Auschwitz, so he saw Eichmann, and guess who Eichmann invited to Auschwitz? They would parade Jews in front of Eichmann, they would beat the Yid. Eichmann invited the Mufti from Jerusalem. My grandfather remembers Eichmann and the Mufti sitting arm in arm, laughing as they beat Jews in front of them. So my grandfather said, that's the kiyum of this Gemara. Vayelech Esav el Yishmael. That's the union of Esav and Yishmael is a very, very frightening union. Vayelech Esav el Yishmael. But you know, when one hangs out with the other, they're both bad company. And the Gemara says something very interesting. The Gemara says, there's a machloikis tanoim about a certain bird. The name of the bird is Zarzir. A Zarzir is a starling. And the Chachamim say, a starling is kosher. Why not? It's not one of the 20 birds mentioned in the Chumash that are not kosher. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, no. Who does the Zarzir hang out with? The Zarzir hangs out with the Oirev. And the Oirev is a non-kosher animal. So even though we don't have a tradition that the Zarzir is treif, but if the Zarzir is always flying with the Oirev, then the Zarzir is treif. Nothing more we need to know. So we see from here, guilty by association. Good, Alvin. Very good. Okay. Give him a cigar after the share. Okay. What's the inyan of the Zarzir and the Oirev? Says the Bnei Yissaschar, the Zarzir and the Oirev is a remez to Esav and Yishmael. Because the Gemara is saying, or one raya that bad people associate with each other is the fact that Esav and Yishmael hang out together. Another raya that two bad things associate with each other are Zarzir and the Oirev. Does anybody know, what is the name of the Malach of Esav? Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. What's the name of the Malach of Yishmael? We're going to see soon. The name of the Malach of Yishmael is Rahav, Reish He Beis, 207. Zarzir is 207. Zarzir is Yishmael. Oirev, says Bnei Yissaschar, is Esav. The same way Esav and Yishmael hang out together, the Zarzir and the Oirev hang out together. Says the Bnei Yissaschar, Shabbos is mevatel the koyach of Esav and Yishmael. The 70 words of Kiddush are mevatel the shivim umay sa'olam. Savri maranon are mevatel Esav and Yishmael. The day of rest in between Friday and Sunday is mevatel Esav and Yishmael. Memela, if you take the word Zarzir, which is 424, says the Bnei Yissaschar, and you take the word Oirev, which is 278, you get 702. Shabbos is mevatel the Zarzir and the Oirev. Shabbos is mevatel Esav and Yishmael. So we see that Shabbos has the koyach to nullify, to be mesares the umay sa'olam. As long as we're consistent, as long as we're devoted to Shmira Shabbos, ein kol uma v'lashon sholetas banu. Marv Rabbeisai, now let's try to delve a little bit deeper into understanding what does it mean Hashem offer the Torah to the Ummah Sa'olam? It does not mean what we thought. the Rebbeinu Shalom never had any kavanah to give the Torah to the Ummah Ha'olam. Hashem was Bachar Banu. We didn't just choose Hashem, Hashem chose us. His only kavanah was to give us the Torah. But listen carefully, we're going to start with a very important question. Let's look back in number 6. Let's look back in the pasuk, Vayomer Hashem misinai ba v'zarach miseir lamai. And we're going to see the Zohar HaKadosh has a tremendous kasha on this pasuk. If this pasuk is saying that the Rebbeinu Shalom offered the Torah to the Ummah Ha'olam, primarily Esav and Ishmael, so it should say, Vayomer Hashem li Sinai ba. The Rebbeinu Shalom went to Sinai. V'zarach li Seir. After all, the Rebbeinu Shalom is the one who's going to these Ummahs and he's offering them the Torah. Why in the world does the pasuk say Hashem mi Sinai? V'zarach mi Seir. Hoifia mehar paran. Hashem's not coming from these places. Hashem went to these places. So the Toras Chaim quotes the Zohar HaKadosh, and I put the Zohar on the page for you. Let's read a little bit. The Chidah says, even just to read words of Zohar, it's good for your neshama, even if you can't understand it, but the Toras Chaim explains what this means. This is the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Balak, and the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Balak is primarily a conversation between a Yenuka, a child, and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And the Yenuka has a very stark akasha to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The Yenuka comes, look at number 17. Tachazi. In Ois Kuf Lamed Ches. Tachazi, come and see. Ksiv Hashem b'tzeischa miseir, b'tzadcha mistei edoim, eretz rasha, b'shaita debai kutchabrich l'mei v'arasli. So when Hashem wanted to give the Torah to Klal Yisrael, Azal v'zaman lu b'nei Esav, he invited the b'nei Esav, v'loi kiblu, they didn't accept it. Kida amar Hashem misinai ba v'zarach miseir lamai. V'loi boi l'kibla, they didn't want to accept it. Azal b'nei Yishmael, went to the b'nei Yishmael, v'loi boi l'kibla, they didn't want to accept it. Dichsiv ha'fiyah mehar paran. So therefore, what Hashem do? Kivin loy bo ahader loin li Yisrael. Hashem then took the Torah to Klal Yisrael. So says the Zohar, hashda is l'shayla. This is the question of a child. So the child has a kasha. V'hataninan, and the child says, you're allowed to ask questions. There's no chait in asking questions, the kid says. He says, V'hataninan, there's nothing wrong if somebody is medaktik in the psukim of the Torah, v'yishal she'elti lanhara milay, and ask questions to illuminate something. Hakralai is yashva. The pasuk doesn't have an interpretation. The isla shayla, we could ask, could shabrichu kad azal l'seir, when the Rebbeinu Shalom went to Seir, the Yenuka wants to know, who exactly did Hashem offer the Torah to in Seir? And then he says 2 lines down, another question, V'ha'idmar, Dahachi mibai kra l'meimar. This is what the pasuk should have said. Hashem l'Sinai ba. Hashem came to Sinai. V'zarach l'seir lamai. Hashem shone to Seir. Ha'ifia l'har paran. Mahu mi seir. Mahu mehar paran. Says the kid, Kula is lamindo astakla. We need to know this. We need to look into this. This v'hashilna, this is a question. V'lo shamana v'lo yadana. I don't know the pshat, the kid says. What does it mean, Hashem mi Sinai? But it should say Hashem li Sinai. Hashem li zarach li seir. Ha'ifia li har paran. Comes Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Kadasa Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon said, now I'll translate. He said, you have a good question. And here's the answer. That when Hashem, the pasuk says, Hinei anochi ba elecha ba'av ha'anan, Hashem revealed himself at Har Sinai. V'zarach miseir lamai, listen carefully. Mimada amru b'nei seir d'loi ban lekibla, when the b'nei seir said they don't want to be makabel the Torah, mehai, from that, in har loin li Yisrael, it illuminated Klal Yisrael. V'oisif alayu nahira, and it added light, v'chavivu sagya, and it made them more beloved. Because of this, we were illuminated from Har Paran. Mimada amru b'nei Paran, when b'nei Paran said that they don't want to be mekabel, mehai oisifu Yisrael chavivu v'nehiru yater kidikayas. Meaning, just say the words, that when Hashem offered the Torah to Esav, and Esav did not want to be mekabel the Torah, Zorach miseir, a light came from Esav and went to Klal Yisrael. when we say Hoifia me Har Paran, it doesn't mean Hashem went to Har Paran. It means when Har Paran rejected the Torah, they then gave us a light. Zorach Miseir. Esav gave a light to us. Yishmael gave a light to us. What does that mean? So the Zohar continues, look in Kuf Mem Aleph. So, in the first couple of lines, Reb Shimon explains who exactly the Rebbeinu Shalom gave the Torah to in Seir and in Yishmael. And what the Zohar says is beyond the scope of the Shiur, meaning I don't know what he says. But look on the third line in Ois Kuf Mem Aleph. Kadmata legabe droya smala. When the Rebbeinu Shalom came to his left arm. Now the left is which nation? Rabbi say the left. Who's the left? Esav. Gavaldik. Chama kuchabricho bahi droya. Hashem saw on that side Dama Bisha, bad blood. To have a misrabi mitaman. That was bubbling over there. Hashem said, Omar itzrichli levaror lavna droyada. I need to clean them out. Ve'iloi, if I don't do that, yimachahu dama bisha. That blood is going to cause terrible yifgam kula, will destroy everything. In other words, Hashem says, I need to do something to Esav because Esav is bad news. Esav is trouble. Ma'ovid, what did the Rebbeinu Shalom do? Kara l'samel. He called the Samach Mem. So the Samach Mem says, no problem. What do you want, Rebbeinu Shalom? And Rebbeinu Shalom says, Tiboy, Raisa, you want my Torah? So Hashem said, the Samach Mem said, what does it say in your Torah? This part everybody knows. So Hashem said, it says, Lo sirtzach. Says the Zohar, Dole kuchabrichu la'asar de itztrich. Rebbeinu Shalom jumped to the place that he needed. Meaning, the Rebbeinu Shalom never had a kavanah to give the Torah to Esav and Yishmael. The Rebbeinu Shalom's kavanah was to mitigate the Umay Sa'olam and remove from them any glory they have by offering them the Torah. So Esav said, Rebbeinu Shalom, dilachi, v'dilachi, hey, this is your Torah and it should remain yours. I don't want it. Asiv eschanan kameh, amar morida alma, i'ad yavili, Rebbeinu Shalom, if you give me the Torah, Esav said, Kol shultanu dilias aver, I'm going to be stripped of all of my power, because my power comes from Ritzicha. My koyach is from Mazel Madim, Mars, the red star. If you give me loy sirtzach, I will have no koyach. I will have no power. Says Esav to the Rebbeinu Shalom, Toiloi Raisach, take your Torah. I don't want any share. I have a great idea, Esav says. Why don't you pawn it off to the other guy? Give it to Yaakov Avinu. He is more fitting for the Torah. Now, Esav's kavanah of giving the Torah to Klal Yisrael was to strip us of our koyach. Deha delei Torah amar alayu. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says to Esav, I don't know, Esav. If you don't want it, maybe they're not going to want it. So Esav says, you're right, Rebbeinu Shalom. Everybody knows that if you want to convince somebody to do something, you got to bribe them. So Rebbeinu Shalom says that's a great idea. Why don't you give all of your light to Klal Yisrael? And at that moment, Hashem took all the light of Esav and he gave it to Klal Yisrael. Says the Zohar at the end of Kuf Mem Dalet, Hadahu dechsiv v'zarach mi seir lamai. He's shown from Seir, Seir mamish. Whatever koyach Esav had, we took b'kabbalas haTorah. Then the Rebbeinu Shalom went to his right side. And on his right side he saw bad news. Yishmael, bad news. He went to Rahav. Rahav is 207. That's the Malach of Yishmael. And Hashem offered the Torah to Yishmael. And Yishmael said, what does it say? So Rebbeinu Shalom said, no, it says in the Torah, Lo sinaf. So Yishmael said, no way. Our koyach is a koyach of fish, mayim, chesed. By the way, mayim is chesed. What bracha did Yishmael get? The hifresi eschem, the herbesi eschem, the bracha pruruvu. Pere Adam is a lashon pruruvu, says the Zohar. Yishmael said, Rebbeinu Shalom, if you give us the Torah, you're going to strip us of all of our koyach. No thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. We really appreciate it. Why don't you give it to Klal Yisrael? So Hashem said, maybe they're not going to want to take it. So Yishmael said, we'll give them a gift. We'll give them all of our light. Hadahu dechsiv, haifiyah, Meyar Paran. Meyar Paran. So the Zohar is telling us that at Kabbalas HaTorah, we got a lot of gifts. What were the gifts? The light. Who do we get the light from? Esav and Ishmael. Look in the Zohar in Ois Kufnon Aleph. Look in Ois Kuf Tachazi. Edyam de Bnei Yisrael. What were the jewels of Klal Yisrael? Elaine, Matanon, Veniz, Bizan, de Kabilu. These were the gifts that we were given from the Umayis Ha'olam. Now, even though we got gifts from all the Umayis Ha'olam, the main gifts that we got were from Esav and Ishmael. What does the Zohar say? That at Kabbalah, that when Klal Yisrael sinned with the Egel, Vayisnatzlu, the end of Kufnon Aleph, Bnei Yisrael, Es Edyam. Klal Yisrael were stripped of their jewelry. Shenemar, Vayisnatzlu, Bnei Yisrael, Es Edyam, Inon Matanois Ba'adam. So let's get something straight, and this is already the biggest clue to answer all of our questions. The Lashon of the Zohar is that we got a gift from Esav, and we got a gift from Ishmael. We got light from Esav, which we have no idea what is this light. We got light from Ishmael, we also don't know what that light was. And then when we sinned with the Egel, what happened, Rabbi Yisai? Vayisnatzlu b'nei Yisrael edyam. We lost the light. Wait a second. That's not what the Gemara said. If you turn back into number 1, the Gemara says, when Klal Yisrael said, Nasev and Ishma, we got crowns, and when we sinned with the Egel, we lost the crowns. Vayisnatzlu b'nei Yisrael es edyam, the Gemara says. So what is it? Did we get light, and we lost the light, like the Zohar says? Or did we get crowns, and we lost the crowns, like the Gemara says? Says the Toras Chaim, obviously, whatever these crowns were, the crowns were the light. So that's very interesting, says the Toras Chaim. That means, where did the crowns come from? These were not crowns that were sitting in Shamayim. These crowns must have been given to us from Esav and Ishmael. That means the crowns were the light that Esav and Ishmael gave us to bribe us to be makabel the Torah. Says the Toras Chaim, Oyam v'noira. How did we get the crowns? What words did we say? Nasa v'nishma. Marav Rabbi said, what's the koyach of Esav? What was Esav's name? Esav. What does the Rashbam say? That he was called Esav, a lashon asui, made. By the way, then why didn't we call him asui? Right? Ayin, sin, vav, yud. What happened to the yud? I have a question. Why was he called Yaakov? Lashon akev. So he should have been called akev. So Esav should have been called asui, and Yaakov should have been called akev. So Magal HaMukar says that's what it means. Yaakov was holding on to the heel of Esav. The heel was, his name was Ayin, Sin, Vav, Yud, and Yaakov grabbed the Yud, and he joined it to the Akev, and he made it Yaakov. But Esav is the Kayach of Asiya. What's the Kayach of Yishmael? Kishama Hashem b'kol hanar b'asher husham. Kishama Hashem b'koila. The Kayach of Yishmael is the Kayach of Shemiah. Now we understand. Naseh and Ishma, says the Toras Chaim. Naseh is the light that Esav had. Naseh, lashon of Esav. The glory, the majesty, the grandeur of Esav, Klal Yisrael got b'Kabbalas HaTorah. And the glory of Yishmael, the majesty of Yishmael, Klal Yisrael got when they said the word Nishma. Nasev and Ishma are the words Esav and Yishmael, says the Toras Chaim. That whatever light Esav and Yishmael were supposed to have, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I don't want them to have anything. All godless, all grandeur, all teferes must be in the hands of Klal Yisrael. Avada and Avada, the Rebbeinu Shalom was only going to give us the Torah. He never was going to give the Torah to any of the Umas HaOlam. But the Rebbeinu Shalom was going to give the Umas HaOlam some light in this world, some koyach, some power. But Rebbeinu Shalom allowed us to take away from Esav any tiferes, any light, any majesty. We got the koyach of Esav when we said Nasa. We got the koyach of Yishmael when we said Nishma. Says the Toras Chaim, Nasa and Nishma is Keneged, Esav and Yishmael. How do we overcome Esav and Yishmael? Shabbos. Where's the smallest letter in Chumash? Vayikra, the Aleph Ze'ira. What's the biggest letter in Tanakh? I don't know. The biggest letter in Tanakh is the first letter of Divrei Hayamim. What's the first word of Divrei Hayamim? Adam, Sheis, Enosh. The Aleph of Adam is Aleph Rabasi, but not Stam Rabasi. It's bigger than any ois in all of Tanakh. That's the Messiah. That the Aleph Ze'ira of Vayikra and the big Aleph of Divrei Hayamim. What's the Inyan? So the Arizal says, look at number 24 in the Shara Kavanah. It says Arizal. The Arizal is on the Tefillah Yismach Moshe b'matnas Chelkai. That when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai, he received from the Ribbon Shalom 1,000 doses of light. By the way, it's very interesting in the Hakdama of the Noid B'Yehuda to the Tzlach. You know, the Oisios of the Aleph Beis. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3, Kaf is 20, Lamed is 30, Reish is 200, Shin is 300, Taf is 400. So what's 500? The end of Chaf. What's 600? The end of Mem. What's 700? The end of Nun. What's 800? The end of Pei. What's 900? It's the final Tzaddik. And what's 1,000? Aleph, which was 1, is now Elef, is 1,000. So the Aleph keeps on going. So Aleph could be 1, it could be 1,000. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai and Klal Yisrael received the light from A7 Ishmael, how many doses of light did Moshe Rabbeinu get? Elef, 1,000. That is Merumas of the first Aleph of Sefer Divrei Hayomim, Aleph Rabasi, says Arizal. But then when we sinned with the Egel, he was diminished until 1,000th of it to the Aleph Ze'ira of Vayikra. But the thing is, says Arizal, it wasn't Moshe Rabbeinu's fault because he didn't make the Egel. So every single Shabbos, says the Ari, Moshe Rabbeinu gets the light back. Says Ari, what's the light? Says Arizal, those are the crowns of Nasav and Ishmael. But Moshe Rabbeinu is very generous. Moshe Rabbeinu says, even though I should have had it the whole time, and I only lost it because of you, and now that I'm getting it back, it should be mine, but I'm going to do Klal Yisrael a favor, that when the Rebbeinu Shalom gives it back to me, I give it back to all of Klal Yisrael. Says Arizal, every single Shabbos, Klal Yisrael receives back the crowns of Nasav and Ishmael that Hashem gives Moshe Rabbeinu. Says Ari, this is the Kavana. Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkai. Moshe Rabbeinu should rejoice in the matana of his chelek. What's matana? Which matana? This matana is the crowns of Har Sinai that is restored to Moshe Rabbeinu every Shabbos. And then Mamela, the rest of Klal Yisrael should rejoice. Why? Ki eved ne'eman karasalai. He's a faithful eved, and he says, I'm not going to keep it for myself. I'm going to share it with the rest of Klal Yisrael. Well, so I'll ask you a question. Why do you think we get the crowns back on Shabbos? Why not on Tuesday? Why not on Purim? Why not on Lag BaOmer? Why not on Tu B'Shvat? Why dafka on Shabbos? It's exactly like we mentioned, that the way we overcome Esav and Yishmael is through the koyach of Shabbos. Oirev Zarzir, 702. We overpower it with Shabbos. Shabbos has the 70 words of Kiddush plus Savri Maranan. Through Shabbos in Kaluma, the Am Sheiletes Bano. So every Shabbos we go back, we're restored to the Madrega of Har Sinai when the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us the light of Esav and Yishmael through Nasav and Ishmael. Moshe Rabbeinu takes it back, and Moshe Rabbeinu is a Nadiv, and he gives it and he shares it with the rest of Klal Yisrael. By the way, so this sounds very machshavadik. That sounds very. This is from the Toras Chaim. Does anybody else say this whole Torah? Yes. None other than the Vilna Gaon himself, Baba Mamish Bekitzer Nimratz. The Vilna Gaon, in 2 lines, in Aderes Elyo and V'zois HaBracha, look at number 21, says the Gaon, V'zarach Miseir, says the Gaon, Kisharatza HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Litein Torah, Li-Yisrael, Hechzira Al Kol Uma V'Lashain, Uba El Yishmael, Amr Loi Torah, Mak Siva, Amr Loi Sinaf, Amr Loi Yevsher, V'kulam Ninla Matanois, Dahainu Esav v'Yishmael, v'nasnu lahem Asiya u'Shmiya. We were given the Kayach of Asiyah and the Kayach of Shmiya. Naseh v'nishma, that's the Chiddush. The Chiddush is Naseh v'nishma is the glory of Naseh, is the glory of Esav. Nishma is the glory of Yishmael. So Mar Rabbi say, what does it mean that we took the glory of Esav and the glory of Ishmael? What is their glory? What is their light? What is their grandeur? What is their majesty? So there's a beautiful netziv. Yeah. No, right. We hope not, right? So the netziv says very beautiful. The netziv says in the Hamek Davar, Al shloisha dvarim ha'olam oimed, al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avoda, ve'agmilas chasadim. Original plan was we were going to be the Amud HaTorah, and that is the main Amud of the world. But Yishmael is from Abraham Avinu. He was the Bechor of Abraham. Who would know Chesed more than Yishmael? Yishmael was going to be the Amud of Chesed. And Esav was the Bechor of Yitzchak. Yitzchak was the Amud of Avodah. Esav would have been the Amud Avodah. Says the Netziv, before the Torah was given, the clergy, the priests all came from Esav. The Hachnasas Orchim was in the hands of Yishmael. But when they refused to be Makabel the Torah, we not only took the Amud Torah, we took the Kayach Asiyah, which is the Kayach Avodah of Esav. We took the Kayach Hashmiya, the Kayach of Chesed from Yishmael. And this is what it means, Rabbi say, that Zarach mi Seir, the light of Seir shone to us, the light of Yishmael shown to us. So I saw in the Sefer Likutei Mamarim Shvilei Pinchas from Rav Pinchas Friedman, Rosh Kollel of Belz. He says very beautiful. The pasuk says, "V'atem tiyuli mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh v'yisem li segula." So by the way, the Shloah Kadosh writes, "Segula mi kol ha'amim." We took the treasures from all the nations. By the way, just as an aside, it's incredible. Every single pasuk in Megillas Rus begins with the letter Vav, except for 8 psukim. So the Yalkut Shimoni says, because Rus embraced Bris Milah that was given in 8 days. The Chidah brings down from the Mikubalim that the 8 psukim that do not begin with the letter Vav are a pasuk that begins with a Yud, a Shin, an Ayin, a Yud, a Hey, a Beis, an Aleph, and a Lamed. Spelling out Yeshaya ben Avraham Halevi. Because that's the name of the Shloah HaKadosh, that the Shloah HaKadosh was the Gilgal of Rus. That's what the Chidah brings down and brought down many, many Svarim. Seder HaDoros brings it down. But anyway, you'll look. Every single, the Shloah, Rus, there's a lot of Torah about that. But we just call it the Shloah and Rus. Anyway. But another pshat, V'yisem li segula, so the Sifrei Chassidus says, V'yisem li segula is a lashon of a segal. You'll have V'yisem li segula. The segal is 3. What does that have to do with Kabbalah Torah? It's exactly what we're saying. That when we were Makabel the Torah, and we said Nasa v'nishma, we took not only the Amod HaTorah, we took the Amod HaAvodah, we took the Amod HaChesed, and we took all 3 Amudim, Sha'olam Oimelav, and now the world stands only and solely on Klal Yisrael. And this was the great gift that we got on Shavuos, the crowns, the glory of all the Ummah Yisraelim, that Chachma Bagoyim Tamin, but Torah Bagoyim Al Tamin, that all the grandeur and majesty lays in Klal Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ribbon Shalom, make sure you don't give us the Torah on Friday. Because if you give us the Torah on Friday, maybe we'll just get the Torah, but maybe we're not going to get the light and the crowns of Nasav and Ishma, the way to be Mavatal, Esav and Yishmael. Make sure you push the Torah to Shabbos, so we should be Zoicha not only to Kabbalah HaTorah, but all the glory and majesty of all the Ummah Ha'olam. Thank you everyone for coming. I wish everybody a Chag Kosher v'Sameach. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.